One standout and truly unfortunate reality about these Georgia runoff elections is how much misinformation, completely outlandish statements have been at the center of this battle for the Senate, aimed at discrediting the November election results and convincing Georgia's voter base that Democrats are trying to steal today's elections as well. So what's been spreading? Conservative media personalities Diamond and Silk, for example, claimed on Facebook that people who were not eligible to vote were receiving ballots in Georgia's special elections. False, shared hundreds of times. Right-wing commentator Mark Levin shared a post on Facebook falsely suggesting that Raphael Warnock was a communist who welcomed Fidel Castro to his church. False, but shared more than 3,000 times. Lara Trump, President Trump's daughter-in-law, shared stories on her Instagram and Facebook pages that claimed suitcases filled with ballots were pulled out from under tables during the November vote count. False, but shared tens of thousands of times. In fact, nearly 100 Facebook ads had widely debunked claims like these. No, John Ossoff is not a Chinese government informant, and Raphael Warnock is neither a communist nor a child abuser. And yet, sadly, we still have to say that. We have to fact-check those claims. Even the President of the United States advanced QAnon and 4chan-created conspiracy theories in a call last week with Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger when trying to make his case for election fraud. Claims like the entirely discredited conspiracy theory that voting machines in Georgia rigged the election against him. And let's not forget, this is a state with a district that actually elected a conspiracy theorist as a House representative back in November. So when truth is up for debate and maybe even losing, as we're seeing in Georgia, what, if anything, can we do about it? Joining me to discuss all this is NBC News investigative reporter Brandy Zadrozny. Brandy, thanks for coming back on the show. You've been following all of these right-wing misinformation campaigns and conspiracy theories for a while now. Is it fair to say that the Georgia runoffs, in so many ways, are a referendum on truth, on reality, about fraud, about corruption, about steals?
I think it's safe to say that this just feels like the new normal, that this sort of thing is never really going away, that the mechanism is in place to quickly spread these lies through existing networks and have them amplified because of the speed with which people can organize online. And so I don't think that there's any end to this in sight. This is just what we're going to have to do every single election.
Every single election. How depressing. And then you have Donald Trump's rally last night where his speech was so rife with ludicrous claims that we don't have time to go through it here. If we tried to fact check it all, it would take several hours, saying he won the election, that ballots were thrown in the river, that there were underage voters. He's also been promoting protests when already so much violence is being stoked online in right-wing forums. How do you deal with misinformation when it's coming from the very top? These are not fringe trolls.
No, they're really not. What's interesting about it, though, is that Trump has sort of managed to put himself into this really interesting position where he's not only the originator of the misinformation, he's also the amplifier of the misinformation. And then he points to the very misinformation that he has created and says, look at what all these people believe. So it's, a feedback loop. It's a misinformation pipeline that he has created in a way, and he directly benefits from. How you combat that? I'm not really sure. I mean, honestly, I stopped I stopped having any sort of false notion that I was going to convince people who are thoroughly entrenched in this, the QAnon people, the people who are, we call it red pilled, they call themselves, those people are sort of too far gone. At this point, we're just sort of trying to document this stuff and get the fence sitters who really are, actual conservatives, people that those people actually exist. We just don't see them so much anymore because we're so busy playing whack-a-mole with the president's lies.
You mentioned how the president creates this kind of nonsense, puts it out there, and then points to it saying, well, people believe it. And I noticed that a lot of other Republicans now are following his lead. Many of the Republican senators who are objecting to the Biden certification tomorrow, led by Ted Cruz, I noticed in their letter they say stuff like, they don't point to actual fraud, they say people believe there's fraud, there's allegations of fraud, and we need to deal with people's concerns that they created, the same feedback loop you mentioned. So you've got a situation now where these conspiracy theories are actually leading to, open assaults on democracy in the chambers of Congress in the nation's capital.
Yeah, I mean, these have actual stakes now. I've said this a million times. Like, I'm an internet reporter and I report on the fringe. I have no business being on shows every day. I have no business talking about this nonsense to a wider audience. Unfortunately, again, because the president is the president, these things have national importance. You know, we're going to see tomorrow a bunch of really fringe people all gathering at the Capitol with some more generic MAGA sort of people who are there for a field trip, basically a last hurrah of the Trump era. But we're going to see some really fringe groups. We're going to see, you know, Boogaloo Boys and militia types. We're going to see Proud Boys. We're going to see far right extreme evangelicals and QAnon types all sort of getting together. And that is what the piece that you just showed really has extremism researchers worried. And another example of like what happens when these fringe groups come off the internet and into the streets and into the real world. What does that look like? What dangers does that pose? It's concerning stuff.
Yeah, it's very concerning. And you have the president, I believe, planning to address some of these people tomorrow in D.C. He's already inciting them where else? On Twitter, in multiple tweets, warning about violence, warning Antifa, his great demon. And it's kind of, it's not just scary, but it's deeply depressing because, as you say, they're coming out onto the streets, they're coming into reality. This is mainstream stuff. We have right now a major Senate race in Georgia that we're covering, and yet people can't vote. I mean, sorry if I sound naive here, they can't vote based on policies or information or, you know, politicians have always lied about each other and made false accusations. But when you have a Kelly Loeffler suggesting that Raphael Warnock is a child abuser and playing into QAnon tropes about pedophiles running the Democratic Party, I don't know how to respond to that.
There really is no response. Like, what can you do? I don't know the answer. If anybody does, DM me on Twitter. It's open. I think, you know, and I worked for Fox News again when those same people were claiming they cared about the deficit, right? So now it seems like the masks are off, I guess, that what's important seems to be just a different set of values than I really know how to point to. But I think that in terms of like misinformation, there's got to be some tipping point. And I think like sometimes I think it's the QAnon people who might do it because, you know, I have most of my family is pretty conservative, Bible Belt, Southern Baptist types, and they don't want to be associated with this crazy QAnon thing. So the more we show them for what they are, the more we put these people on TV and we show their rallies and we show what happens tomorrow at this protest. I think that when you put that into when you show that and you know shine a light on that and you can have people say, well, I'm conservative but I'm not that, I think that that's important. There is some sort of line in the sand, and I think you may have even seen it with the fact that Trump lost the election. You know, I think that there are people who realize what this misinformation has done and the craziness that we're all in right now and want something different, want to nudge towards truth.
Yes, he lost, but he got more than 70 million votes. So there is an appetite out there for the conspiracy theories, sadly. Brandy, Zadrozny, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on the show tonight. Hi, I'm Mehdi Hasan. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more of the Mehdi Hasan Show by clicking on any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thank you for watching.